Hi, so today I want to share with you 5 more decks that I would recommend to beginners. I already did one of these videos back in, let me actually see when I uploaded this video. Back in April. So then I recommended 6 tarot decks that I recommended for beginners. I don't necessarily still stand behind all of the choices. So out of all 6, I would still recommend the Modern Witch, the Good Karma, and the Magical Nordic Tarot. However, I was at this moment, as well as the True Heart Intuitive. However, I was at that moment still a beginner myself, and I loved those decks, which is why I wanted to recommend them. However, now I have a couple of choices that and I will talk about them, of course, when I get to them. But I really do think that these have all the necessary components that make a great beginner deck. So to me, what I see as a beginner deck is maybe you have another deck already, or maybe this is going to be your first, and you're looking for a tarot deck that you can actually learn with, and that you can look at the images and use the images for a better understanding of the meaning of the card. One thing that I do want to say regarding beginner decks is that the most important thing as a beginner is that you feel connected to the cards, to the images, to the deck itself. So I don't have, and I will not talk about the original Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck as a deck for beginners, because you know that one exists. And if you are here looking for beginner decks, that is probably one that you aren't looking for, because you don't feel connected to the images on the decks. And these ones, though associated and closely related to, based off the Rider-Waite-Smith images, they are not that. A deck will only work for you as a beginner if you feel connected to the images on the deck. So that is just something that I want to have said. So as well as a good guidebook. A good guidebook is something that I think is important. So let's first start with this one. And this is, what is in here? Oh yeah, I'm gonna throw this box out. There's some trash in here. But this is the Anna K Tarot, and when I first saw this deck, I didn't like it because it was really weird. I keep my deck in a pouch that I made myself because the box is really flimsy. This is what the back of the cards look like. They are little like trees. And then this is the front. So we have dark black borders. I edged it myself, which was pretty easy to do, by the way. And the faces are so emotive, and they're also a little weird and maybe even ugly, but I actually really like that. So there's quite a bit of yellow in this deck. Actually, all of these cards that I'm showing you have yellow in them, and I really like the contrast of the black and the yellow. But like I said, the faces are so emotive, and they really help me get a better understanding of what I am looking at, what sort of card I am looking at, what the meaning of the card could possibly be. And that is something why I really like this deck. And again, I think that if you are a beginner, you might want a deck that you think is pretty. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I do have some other decks here that I do think are pretty as well in the original tarot deck for beginner recommendation video. I don't know, this is the only deck I think that I have that I wouldn't call pretty, that I still have bonded with so much. I don't know how, but when I got this deck in, I instantly bonded with it. It also comes with a guidebook. This is called the Anna K Tarot Handbook, and for every card it has a black and white picture of the card and then an interpretation. What I do like about this guidebook is that it has a lot of white space underneath the interpretation, so you can write down like your own keywords, because I love to work with the tarot with keywords, and I am actually working on like a tarot cheat sheet with keywords for you to download for free off of my Ko-fi page. So that is another thing that I like about the Anna K Tarot. Overall, I just recommend it because it's easy to shuffle. The cards aren't too big. They are a little bit wider than, let me see, they are a little bit shorter and quite a bit, like almost a whole centimeter, I think, wider than the Rider-Waite-Smith original, like Rider-Waite-Smith tarot cards. However, I find them super easy to shuffle. They riffle shuffle like this amazingly. So that is really great. I only started learning that back shuffle slip of the cards thing this week. I'm still practicing. But yeah, this is just, I absolutely love it. The next deck that I recommend is a deck that I saw so many people recommend, and I always said, no, I don't want it. I don't think it's my thing, because there's one thing about the cards that bugged me so much. But this is the Seer's Tarot. It comes in this small box, and I really like that because I tend to store my tarot decks in bags because the boxes are usually not great. Like, this is just not great quality. It's also very big. This box is also very big, and this one is just very easy to store. So what you get into this box is the deck of cards as well as a guidebook. So let's first look at the cards. This is the back of the cards. I think they're pretty. I think they're great. And then the front of the cards. I love this art style so much. And one of the things that I did not like about these cards is that the titles aren't in the same place. And I am somebody, I love structure. I don't think I get annoyed by it anymore. But when I was looking at the images, when I was looking at flip throughs, I was so annoyed that the titles weren't in the same place on every card. Like, for some of them they're in the bottom right corner, others are in the bottom left corner, some are in the top right or left corner, and that really annoyed me. These cards, this deck is a little thick. Like, I personally cannot riffle shuffle this, but I also have some mobility issues in my hands, which makes it very hard to riffle shuffle in general. But this is like it's not working. It's not working for me. And maybe if you have bigger or stronger hands, that is not an issue for you. I overhand shuffle these, and they do that great because the cardstock is matte and they just shuffle great. But they're like not like matte in a way where they stick to each other, because I feel like some matte cards can do that. These don't. These shuffle amazingly. And then we have this little guidebook that has information about how to start with the tarot, an explanation about how the tarot deck is structured. So I think that that is great for beginners. And then for every card, you have a little depiction of the card, as well as keywords for the upright and reversal, and an interpretation, and then a quote. So there's a lot of information to read for each card, and I think that will make it very great for beginners to start reading the tarot. And like I said, I love the images. I think it's very modern. I think there's a lot of information that you can get out of the card. Like for the Five of Wands, in other decks I just see it as sort of a conflict, but in this deck, because we see one person doing all of the things, I see it more as inner conflict, not really knowing what to go, where to go, what to do, and feeling a little bit overwhelmed with that. So there are some things that you can see in this deck, in these images, where you're like, oh, I guess you sort of get a better understanding, or a different understanding, I should say, of some of these cards. And I really, really love looking through this deck. I'm gonna stop now because we have to get going to the next one. But overall, the Seer's Tarot, created by Chris Ann, beautiful deck, definitely recommend, and it is recommended for beginners by so many people for a reason. The next tarot deck, and it's actually the last tarot deck for this video, is the Everyday Witch deck by Deborah Blake and art by Elizabeth Alba. So this is really fun. It says here, black cats, pointed hats, and magic brooms too. So this is a deck that features witches in their everyday life and is super casual. I really like it. So what you get in the box is a huge book, which is why the box is so big. So you have this huge book. For every card you have a color image on the page, then you have a quote, another quote, and then the interpretation of the cards. And there is a little bit of space left for you, for most cards, to write down your own keywords, which is something that I appreciate. And then I keep this in a little bag because I don't like to store this in its huge box. So here are the cards, and these are, I don't know if they're like standard Rider-Waite-Smith size. I'm pretty sure they are not. No, so they are a little bit shorter, almost like a millimeter wider, and then like 3 millimeters shorter. And this deck is published by Llewellyn, and you will hear a lot of people complain about the cardstock of Llewellyn decks because it's kind of flexible, but it shuffles great. I love how these shuffle. These decks are the reason that I learned to riffle shuffle. I have a bunch of other of these boxed decks. I have the Dark Wood Tarot that I don't necessarily recommend for beginners, but if you like the art, then you know. I have the Mermaid Tarot, the Magical Dogs Tarot, and there are so many more tarot decks that come in these boxes that are amazing for beginners, mostly because they come with a guidebook. And okay, let me talk about the cards now. So these are the backs. I wasn't necessarily very fond of these backs, but I've sort of grown to love them. They're kind of quirky, and so is this deck. So we have witches, mostly in like just casual everyday setting, but in some they are more modern and some they are more medieval. So that is something like here we have a motorcycle, and then in some other depictions of cards we are more medieval times, but that is something that if you don't mind that, then that is great. Then you will appreciate this deck a lot more than if that is something that really bothers you. But again, I found these cards to be so easy to read. Like with the Six of Swords, usually we see the Rider-Waite, we see them in a boat, ferrying off. Is that a word? Do you say ferrying off? Driving? No, not driving. Floating off. And here we see them on a broomstick. Yeah, they are on a broomstick. I thought they were walking for a little bit, but yeah. And there are, in most cards, there are cats, which is super fun. But yeah, I think this is such a fun deck. And if you are looking for something that is a little bit more lighthearted, but will still give you the messages that you need to hear, I think this is a great option for you. Again, especially because of the guidebook, because in the guidebook I didn't really talk about what they go over in there. But of course, all of the card meanings, some tarot information about how the tarot is set up, I believe. Yeah, there's just so much. And then at the back, we also have some spreads that you can use. So absolutely amazing option. The next two decks are Oracle. First is the Sacred Self-Care Oracle. I talk about this deck so much, I use it so much, and this is an Oracle deck that I love because it centers around self-care. So in this box, again, I love to store my Oracle decks in their original boxes because all that comes in here is the guidebook and the cards, and it fits perfectly. So there's no wasted space there. These are the backs of the cards, and then at the front we have all these self-care prompts. And when you look at the guidebook, you see information about how you can do this. You see a journal prompt that has to do with it. There's just so much fun colors. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I use this deck in so many of my readings, so I definitely recommend it, and I recommend it for beginners because it's just super easy to read. You can do like a card for the day, for the week, for the month. What is it for self-care that I need to focus on? What practical self-care activity can I actually do? So you'll know that the card you pull, you can take it out and you can look at it and you can put it back when you have actually done it. So with every card we have in the guidebook, we have a picture of the card, a mantra, then some information about the activity, usually why it is related to self-care, and then a journal prompts. So I think that is really, really awesome. And then the last Oracle deck that I recommend for beginners, I only recommend for those who have an affiliation, an association, a love for astrology, because this is the Barbieri Zodiac Oracle. And this has, how many cards does this have? 26. So we have planets, zodiac signs, as well as 4 elements. So this is not a thick deck at all. This is what the backs look like, and then the fronts, they're not necessarily pretty. Like, okay, so this is, I guess, another deck that I wouldn't necessarily call pretty. But I don't think it needs to be pretty because it's about the Zodiac signs. And I had another deck where I really liked the art, but it had very big borders, so I trimmed them. I didn't do a great job. The cards were still too big for me to shuffle, so I decluttered that and got this one instead. And I use this one so often because this one really has the essentials. Like the other one also had the houses and aspects and comment. I don't know what else to call them. But this one has the signs, planets, elements, and that is all that I personally need in an astrology deck. It also comes with a guidebook. I don't think this guidebook is necessarily great for readings. It is about information about astrology. So about the signs, about the planets. It has information about what the planet is, about what the sign is, but not necessarily what it means when you pull a card like that. So I will definitely love to do like a deck study video for this. But it basically, if you have astrological knowledge, then this will be very easy for you to use in a reading, which is why I love it. So those were my 5 deck recommendations. Let me pull this here. These were my 5 deck recommendations for beginner decks. If you have any comments on any of these decks, or if you have another recommendation for a beginner, definitely let me know in the comments down below. I would love to learn. I would love to read about your favorite beginner decks. Of course, there are so many out there, but I don't have them all. So I can talk about the ones that I do have. So if you want to see more videos on tarot, definitely subscribe to this channel because I do chats about tarot, pick card readings, all of that stuff all the time. You can also book a personal one-on-one tarot reading with me through the link in the description box below. And yeah, for now I just want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.